Look, I almost don't want to do this topic. I mean, it may be too early in the podcast to cover it. This is one of those quietly controversial, sometimes not so quietly controversial topics in Next Gen ministry. It brings out strong opinions right away. A quick Google search is going to reveal several articles that are pushing back strong from both sides. It is divisive and hotly debated. That's right, we're going to talk about fun in Next Gen ministry. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Brent Parsley Next Gen Leader Podcast. My name is Brent, and I hope that today's episode helps you win in Next Gen ministry. I want to help you with the how of Next Gen ministry so that you can do what matters most. If this has been helpful so far, would you please subscribe? If you're on YouTube, maybe give it a like and jump in the comments section, especially today if you've got a strong opinion about it, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be incredible. And maybe share it with a student pastor, a kids pastor, a Next Gen pastor that you know, and be a part of getting some hopefully helpful coaching and training out to more great leaders that are just like you. Today, we're going to talk about that hotly debated and divisive topic in Next Gen ministry, fun. What is the purpose of fun in our ministries? How much fun is too fun? Shouldn't we care only about depth and kind of forget all about the fun? And I bet you already have opinions about all of that. So when I was just getting started as a student pastor, I was at a large, influential church in Colorado. Things had been going pretty well. We were growing. Summer was coming, and that meant that it was time for my first summer camp. And I wanted to pull out all the stops on this thing. You know, I wanted it to be the best of the best, really show what we could do and have everybody really get engaged and think that this was awesome what was happening. We loaded up all the coach buses, and we drove our students down to Glorieta, New Mexico for 5 glorious days of summer camp. And on night 1, it was time to kick it off. Now, you should know that one of the big TV shows at this time was called Fear Factor. It was hosted by Joe Rogan before he was Joe Rogan with the podcast and all of that. And so, of course, Fear Factor, it was all about facing some of the craziest fears and seeing who was going to be the bravest, not get eliminated, and win $50,000. So, I mean, they're eating gross stuff and getting buried with spiders and having their car set on fire and driving around, jumping off cliffs. I mean, crazy, crazy stuff. What better way to start a summer camp? So we planned a series of Fear Factor events for kind of the pre-show of the first night. I think the first elimination round was called something like the Wheel of Food. And we bought sardines and oysters and hot peppers and some cold cream of mushroom soup. That's actually a personal favorite. It kind of tastes like vomit. It's horrible. Just stuff like that. So we built a spinning wheel out of wood. We put all the food on the wheel in different sections. You spin the wheel, and whatever's sitting in front of you, that's what you have to eat. And so they did, or they didn't, or it took them too long to eat it, and so we eliminated a few students in that round. The second round was bobbing for pickles in, I don't know, like 1,000 earthworms. That's right. We had large bins full of earthworms, and we put dill pickles inside, and students had to stick their face in it and bob around for the pickles in the earthworms. I mean, it was terrible. It smelled terrible. It looked terrible. It was just terrible. And so we eliminated students in that round, and then the final 2 students, they moved on to the final round, which was being buried in live crickets. So we built a box out of wood that we placed on their heads. And so it was a wooden box. We used a turtleneck that we cut and stretched across the bottom of the box so that it would be around their neck and keep the crickets in. And then, so we really planned this. And then the front was plexiglass so that we can see all the crickets on them and crawling on them and going in their ears and stuff. And then an open top through which to pour all of the live crickets. I bought, I don't know how many thousands of live crickets. Somebody's emailing PETA right now, and you probably should. It's terrible. It's surprisingly easy to buy, actually, the thousands of crickets if you know where to look. And so we did it. We put the turtleneck over their head, we poured the crickets in, and we watched the mayhem. We were going to time them to see who would bail and freak out first, but neither of the students budged at all. One guy, one girl, no problem. They sat there with thousands of crickets on their head. And so my buddy Rob, who's leading the game, he was suddenly, surprisingly confronted with a tie. And we hadn't prepared for a tie at all. And by the way, side note, whenever you're preparing games and leading games, always think through all the contingencies and what you're going to do and be ready for anything that could come, because that makes a great game. So Rob, he makes up the tiebreaker on the spot. And the tiebreaker? Eat everything that we just used. I can't even believe that I'm telling this on the internet. So the sardines, the oysters, the hot peppers, the earthworms, the pickles, the crickets, all in a bowl. Whoever finishes first wins. And that girl totally bested that guy. And the place goes wild, erupt, everybody's screaming, everybody's going crazy. And then we started into worship, like you do, So this story, it presents all the crazy stuff about fun in Next Gen Ministry. By the way, you should know that that was the last time that I ever did that. And we monitored those 2 students afterward, and they did fine. Everything was okay. No hospital visits needed. Thank God. But Next Gen Ministry has some of the best and some of the most fun moments ever. Some of my personal favorite and best memories from my life come from those experiences with Next Gen Ministry. But I think most of us know it can also go off the rails pretty quickly and even cause you some trouble pretty quick, and maybe potentially even be a little damaging. And this is one of the reasons that I think fun gets a little controversial, right, in ministry. Because one side's going to say, well, you have to have fun. Kids and teenagers, they need fun. Like, why are you so old and lame, bro? Why are you so serious all the time? No kids and no students are going to want to come to your serious Bible study thingy, right? And the other side's going to say, well, you guys are just all about the fun. Like, you don't care about spiritual depth at all. You just want to attract kids. You want to grow your attendance. You want to grow your thing. And so you're shallow and you're raising kids who are also shallow. And then, of course, there's going to be a spectrum of people in between those 2 extremes. Personally, I think good points are being made on both sides. But for what it's worth, I'll tell you where I land, and then maybe it'll be helpful to you. And where I land is, fun is essential in Next Gen Ministry. It just is. But what does that even mean? And what is our real definition of fun? I mean, I may be totally wrong here, but somewhere along the way, it seems to me that having a crazy game kind of became the way that we have fun, and it's just what we do in student ministry, right? You have to play a crazy game that's potentially embarrassing. And games are great, honestly. They're a simple, pretty easy way to have some fun, to break the ice, to get kids moving and talking, and they can actually help build some great relationships. Like, all of that stuff is so good. But I think I just want to suggest that we maybe broaden our definition of fun a little bit and make sure that we don't just try to put it all into one 5-minute activity when we get our kids or students together. And you probably are already doing that, and that's great. But for kids ministry, I think having some kind of game is pretty much essential, mostly obviously in your elementary class, because they're younger, they're growing in their social skills. It's good to have a very organized, fun activity, gets them engaging with other kids and engaging with leaders, kind of opens them up to everything that's going to happen for the rest of the day. That's really good. Something that's active and involves everybody if possible. And this is controversial too, but I think something that has a soft winning and losing feature. Now, I think some people are going to argue, no, not for kids, that there should never be a loser and a winner in kids ministry. Look, I'm actually Gen X, so I need to see some people lose. I do not care. I'm kidding. Of course I care, but I am good with some soft stakes that kind of produce a little pressure and a soft win, and then we celebrate everybody and clap for everybody for playing and having a good attitude, and I've found it to be pretty successful. In student ministry, I think that games can be good for the same reasons that they're good in kids ministry. But I also think that it's worth examining maybe just a little bit further, right? So here's a question that I ask myself. Where else in a student's life do they have to do crazy, gross games? I mean, are they doing that at school? I mean, maybe, but probably not. When they get their first job, are they going to do that? No. If they're asking you to eat cream of mushroom soup at your first job, that's a bad job. Maybe in some other extracurricular leadership thing that they're getting into or attending, I don't know, but probably not. But middle school students are wrestling with insecurities, and they're trying to figure out, who do I like and who likes me and what do I like? So it can be pretty scary for them to play a wild game, for some of them. But on the other hand, it could also be a good thing to push back on some of those insecurities and to do that in a trusted and safe space where they're really being supported. For high school, I think they're working their way toward independence and maturity, and they're getting ready to move out into the world. We're trying to help prepare them for that along with their parents. So is it possible that it can sometimes feel a little too juvenile? Is it possible that focusing too much on like shock value games keeps them a little bit juvenile? Is it best practice to have a 17-year-old drinking a Coke out of another person's dirty sock? I don't know. This is where I get labeled as, you're just the old lame guy. You don't want to have any fun. Why don't you go home, old man, and why don't you go yell at the kids who are walking on your yard or whatever? But here's the thing. I've always looked for ways to call students up, to call them up to maturity, to encourage them to reach up to the next level of spiritual and emotional growth, to kind of give especially older students a sense of real respect, like I'm trying to draw you into adulthood and maturity. And so having you drink Coke out of a dirty sock, I don't know that that's what I really value most. So these are just the questions that I ask, and maybe you should too. Maybe in your context, this is the best, and it's great for your people. I love it. I just want you to challenge you to ask the question. And sometimes I ask the question, do we even have to play a game? Like, is that youth ministry? I think probably it is kids ministry for the most part, but is it really youth ministry? So many of our ministries' regular programming is so rigid sometimes. Like we've got to have announcements, then we have a game, then we have worship, then we give the message, then we go to small group. Well, what if we didn't have to do a game every night? What if that wasn't just the standard thing that we have to do? What if we broadened our definition of fun to include other elements of our service? What if we considered fun as just a part of our culture instead of putting all that pressure on a 5-minute game that we just have to play? To be honest, when I was starting out as a youth pastor, we almost never did games as a regular part of our Wednesday nights. We would do it more often with middle school, I think, but still not every service. We always did games at camps and retreats, for sure. We had major afternoons of like full on, all out, sometimes, like a little too dangerous field games. And we would do games for pre-meeting fun every night. But camps and retreats are away times. They're out of the norm, and they're made for making memories and more focused and intense times of building relationship and community. So we can actually talk about all that stuff later. But we didn't play a lot of regular games in our regular meetings, but we always had fun. Every week, every meeting, we always had fun. Fun is essential in Next Gen ministry. Kids need to have fun. I think much of kids ministry has to be based, honestly, around fun. Depth isn't necessarily going to be appropriate, right, in kids because of their developmental stage, and we're introducing early concepts to them. So kids need to play. So we want fun to be a bigger part of what we do. We want them to have fun, and we want the fun to be part of what brings them back. And students need to have fun too. But fun becomes different in middle and then different again in high school. And it decreases in priority because we can go deeper. We can get more serious, and we should. If we're keeping fun and games at the same level as kids ministry, well, we may be aiming a little too juvenile. Kids and students need fun, and honestly, people just like to have fun. I mean, why not? Fun is fun. And so there's a way that I think about this actually. And so I want to share with you this fun matrix, because what's more fun than a matrix? Am I right? But I have a way that I think about this. And in this matrix, and I'm going to, here on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm going to try to put it in the show notes so that you can see it there. But if you think of it like a matrix, and so you've got 4 quadrants. You've got an up axis that is labeled fun, and it's pointing up. You've got a horizontal axis that is called depth, and it's kind of pointing to the left, and that gives you your 4 quadrants. And in quadrant 1, you've got high fun and high depth. So quadrant 1 is high fun and high depth, and that's where students kind of live. When you're doing student ministry, you have high fun, you have high ability to go deep, to talk about deep subjects. It's amazing. It's one of the reasons why it's one of the greatest places to serve in the church. High fun and high depth. If you move to the left, and that's the upper right quadrant, you've got high fun and you've got lower depth. And this is where kids ministry lives. High value for fun, crazy fun all the time, but a little lower depth. Not lower in meaning, just lower in depth. You can't say the same things that you could say in a student ministry. You're just introducing kind of initial essential topics. If you drop down to the lower left quadrant, you've got high depth and then low fun. And this is where the adult service typically lives. Got high depth, we're going to go deep, we're going to go as deep as we can. But there's a lower value for fun because they just don't need it. Although I argue some churches could do with just a little more fun. And if you move over to the lower left, to the lower right quadrant, you've got low depth and you've got low fun. And so if this is where you find yourself, well, frankly, it may be time to close up shop or at least make some significant changes. But this is valuable because it helps you see what kind of fun and what kind of depth you can have. If you've got kids in quadrant 1 where there's high fun and high depth, well, you're going to lose kids. You're going to say some things that are inappropriate. You're going to make parents kind of mad at you because they're the ones that need to introduce those topics to their kids, and so on. If you put students over in the quadrant 2 where you've got high fun, but you've got low depth, well, now you've got a thing that's based on lock-ins and kids just having fun, and it's kind of attractional, and you're not getting to the deep places that you need to go, and so on and so forth. So you kind of see how that works. Now, I hope you had as much fun with the fun matrix as I did, but I seriously doubt it. I'm just arguing that we think deeply and maybe a little differently about kids and student ministry and how we have fun. Because I see two problems that happen. One, fun kind of sneaks in and it becomes too big of a focus, usually on accident. And two, fun gets relegated to 1 5-minute slot. And you probably don't do that, but I have seen it a lot. And the game is where we have fun. Worship and the message are serious, real serious, no fun. So worship and your message should have some levity and, dare I say, fun from time to time too. I mean, those things can carry some of the weight of your fun culture that you're striving to build. I think it's the illustrious Jeannie Mayo that says it best. And I think it's the big idea for us today. I believe she says it like this: fun is an attitude and not an activity. Fun doesn't have to be a certain thing that we do. Fun is more like a decision that we make that expands beyond 1 5-minute activity, and it touches almost everything that we do on a Sunday morning or on a Wednesday night. It's an enjoyment of God and His good world. It's an enjoyment of what God is doing in our faith community and what we get to do and who the people are that we get to do that with. So we've already talked around this a little bit, but here's what I think fun does and part of why it's so important. Fun breaks down walls. It does. Fun gets people engaged. It breaks relational barriers. It gets blood flowing. It gets people excited. It connects people to each other. It strengthens groups of people together. It's awesome. But fun also opens hearts. You've probably seen that moment when you're telling a good story in your message, you know. People are really starting to lean in, you can see, and you hit the climax of that story, and people are laughing and smiling. They are in and listening. And then, boom, you use that moment to illustrate the biblical truth that you're talking about. And you see that aha moment in people's minds and hearts, and they're open, and the Spirit comes and breathes life onto that thing. I mean, it's amazing. And it's really, honestly, really effective. And the third thing that I think is really important is that fun proves relationship. Here's what I mean. When's the last time that you had fun with somebody that you didn't like? It doesn't happen very often. You have fun with the people that you love and that you care about. Fun can prove to an elementary kid or to a middle schooler, I like you. Hey, man, listen, we are good. I enjoy being with you. We have a good relationship. I've heard it said that fun can even be a way for a parent to reach out to a prodigal son or daughter, somebody who's kind of run away. Having fun is a way for a parent to prove, even though we're not on the best speaking terms, I'm okay with you and I love you. And in some cases, it can even be a pathway to restore that relationship. So, what should we do with all of this? I'm always going to try to provide some ways that you can apply what we've talked about. So, here's what I think. Have fun. Man, have lots of fun. As often as you can, as often as is appropriate, have fun. But don't be lazy with fun. Be really intentional. Think deeply about fun and enjoyment and what that looks like in your kids' ministry or your student ministry, everywhere that you can. And I got a few things that I think might be helpful. I think I have a list of 5. Number 1, have fun yourself. You need to have fun. When I got started in youth ministry, I was too nervous or stressed to even have fun. So we might have a fun night or a fun segment in our night, but I was so nervous and so insecure about the message that I wasn't having any fun. I was in my head. So find a way not to do that. You can prepare well, get ahead of the game so you feel comfortable. Communicate to your team early so everybody's on the same page. Show up ready to enjoy God, to enjoy your team, and enjoy the kids or students that God placed in your care. If you can do that, the fun that you're having is going to be contagious, and it's going to actually contribute to your fun culture. Number 2, let your team lead fun. You do not have to be responsible for all the fun. You don't have to bring the fun yourself. This is a great place to let other students and leaders kind of contribute. It's really good for their development and for their growth. So let them lead a game where they're carrying the fun. Let them do it. Ask them to contribute fun ideas to your ministry. And the truth is, you might not be that fun. And that's honestly really okay. Maybe you're more serious and you prefer to go deep. I want to have deep conversations. I want to just be with one kid or one student, talk to them and find out what God's doing. That's good. Expand your borders, learn how to have fun, but don't be something that you're not. Let other people carry the weight of fun in your ministry. Listen, honestly, everybody will thank you for it, including you. Number 3, expand your definition of fun. So don't let fun just be the one game that you played at the top of the morning or the night. How can you look at everything in your meeting and even beyond that and make everything more enjoyable? How can you take your screens and the music that you're playing before and after the service? How can that be more fun and enjoyable? How can it contribute to the vibes and the feel in your room? What kind of upbeat worship and joy can you put into your worship with some dancing if your church does that? And what are the ways that you can have a little bit of levity and lightness and make worship fun? I'm not saying you make it frivolous. I'm just saying you enjoy the presence of God because it's pretty enjoyable. There should be some laughter and clapping and enjoying it. Announcements can be fun and funny. You don't have to just stand up there and just say announcements 1, 2, 3 and everybody just tunes you out. We used to do some video announcements that got pretty crazy. I'll talk about those at another time because they may have done more harm than good on some occasions, but there's 2 guys out in the city doing crazy stuff and telling us what was coming up. And, well, I'll tell you that story another time. Message illustrations in your message or stories that you tell, maybe even jokes if that's kind of part of who you are. I don't know. But just think about what can make this message have some moments that are kind of fun. Fun in your small groups. What can you give to small group leaders that they can actually have some fun? Are there questions they could ask or a short activity they could do or even a game that they could play in their groups? What about your post music and screens? Like think about the whole night. What adds to the culture of fun? Intentional hang times. Do you have some root beer floats afterwards so everybody can hang out and have fun when you're done? Just throw that in every now and then. There's lots of ways that you can expand your definition of fun beyond one activity. Number 4, plan some focused fun meetings. You should have fun often, but not every meeting has to be off the charts. It's good to have a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning that's well-planned, well-themed, and enjoyable, but carries a more serious tone. And maybe that's due to the subject matter or the message. Like that's really good. In fact, that's necessary. But also plan regular meetings that are more fun-focused. In kids, here we do an annual donut glow party on the Sunday after Easter. It's something that we invite families to that come for Easter for the first time. And we want them to come back next week to the donut glow party. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We have donuts and we go crazy with glow sticks and glow necklaces and more glow games than we would normally play. But we still worship and we still share a Bible story because what you build it on is what you have to maintain it on. And those focused fun times will contribute to your overall culture without having to be so crazy every time that you gather together. And finally, number 5, remember the goal of fun. The goal of fun is shared memories that increase relationships. Because at the end of the day, we are working to build authentic, godly relationships to provide opportunities to speak into the lives of kids and students and disciple them. This is what we're about. This is what we're doing. Fun is one of the great ways to build those authentic relationships. So take some time this week. Think deeply and strategically about fun in your ministry. And then you know what? Go and have some fun. Hey, what did I miss? Am I crazy? What did you think? Drop a comment on YouTube and let's talk about it. And if you ever want to talk, you can always email me at brent@brentparsley.me, or you can DM me at brentparsley on Instagram. And until next time, I hope that today helps you win in Next Gen Ministry.